Hi, I'm here with Joelle King in Greenwich, Connecticut. She's getting ready for the World Championships that start next weekend in Chicago. And I'm interviewing her on a couple of topics related to Ashaway String and her squash career. So, Joelle, why do you like Ashaway String and Powernick 18 in particular?
Yeah, so I guess the initial reason that I started using the Powernick was that it was recommended to me as a good string for a power player, and obviously my game is based mostly around power, and the early parts of my career that's pretty much all I did. So initially that's why I started using the Powernick.
How long does Powernick 18 last for you, and what type of wear pattern do you have with it?
So it really depends, to be honest. I'm not a superstitious player. I don't have one certain racket that I use until it breaks or what have you. I kind of rotate my rackets around, and I tend to get a bit of fray through the middle of the racket. So I'm not the biggest fan of the fray, and if it gets to the point where it hasn't broken, then I tend to cut it out and get it restrung.
How does the Powernick 18 age your game?
No, I guess, like I said, the initial reason I started using the Powernick was that my game was a power game, but I think of late, I've started developing a lot more variation in my game and a lot more softer and shorter stuff. So I guess I've tried to become more of a complete player, and the Powernick 18 suits that kind of game as well.
What do you consider to be your greatest achievement in squash?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one of the hardest questions that gets asked of us the most. But, there's been some great things in my career. I think the Commonwealth Games, Hong Kong are up there. But I think personally, one of the best things that I've achieved over my years of playing squash is coming back from, what was a career-ending injury, rupturing my Achilles a long time ago, and actually now I'm at my career high ranking, and I think I came back even better and stronger from that, so that's pretty cool.
What tournaments have you got planned for the rest of this year? What are your plans for the rest of this year?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm just getting ready for the big tournament of the year, which is the World Champs next week in Chicago. After that, it's no rest. We go straight on to Egypt to Black Ball. From there, I'm doing an exhibition in Switzerland. Then on to Amsterdam, we have a tournament, DPD Open. Back to Egypt, British Open. Honestly, I could be here forever telling you what tournaments we've got going on, but it's a busy season. So.
Does the season ever end, or is it in the middle of the summer, July, August? Do you consider the beginning of the season to be September, or how does that work for you?
That's an interesting question, because the international professional season normally runs sort of end of August, start of September through till the World Series finals, which is always in June. But after that, I have to go back to New Zealand, and obviously it's winter there, so it's the season there. So quite often, you don't really have too much of a break. But in terms of international scene, it's generally sort of September till June.
When did you start playing squash, and who were your biggest influences in your squash career?
Yeah, well, I started playing when I was 8. Which is actually quite old in terms of a lot of the professional squash players you ask. I started playing because it was a family sport, and we all sort of used to go down and play together. But I think that the two people in my career that kind of inspired me the most probably was, number one, my mum, who she'd be so embarrassed that I actually even mentioned her squash in this video, but she kind of used to play with me and get me started. But later on in my life, I met Leilani. So a couple of years later, she was Leilani Joyce at that time, and she was number 1 in the world. And I had posters of her, and then I met her in real life, and I just couldn't believe that someone was just normal and just the same as me, and she could play squash so beautifully, and she was a world-class athlete. So I think that was probably a huge inspiration to realize that if I dedicated myself, I was just like her, and who knows, maybe one day I could do what she did.
Yeah. So back to your string again. Which tension do you use, and what's your racket that you're using today?
So I'm using the Head 135. I have the teardrop shape, and I have it strung at 27 pounds.
And you said you rotate rackets generally. In your rotation, how many rackets do you have?
I would normally have 4 or 5 in my bag that I take to tournaments at a time. So yeah, just generally whichever one I pick up, I keep them all at the same tension, all the same grips and everything, so it doesn't really matter. I don't want to have superstitions and get stuck at a tournament one time if my favourite racket breaks or something like that. So I think as long as I keep it all the same, it's not too bad.
Is there anything you'd say to any kids out there, that were 8 years old or 12 years old that are playing squash and just getting started? What would you tell them?
I think at that age, the biggest thing for me was I was having fun still. There was lots of my friends that played, so it was kind of a social thing. But I guess just knowing that, squash players aren't anything supernatural. They're just people who love their sport and work hard every day. So if you can do that, then who knows where it'll take you.
That's great. Well, good luck in Chicago, and thanks for your time.